All right, we're going to take a look at a couple of different methods for responsive design. Some of the things we're going to take a look at include the viewport setting, using things like percentages and max width so that you have dynamic pages instead of static sizes. We'll take an attempt at the flexbox strategy, also using box sizing, which allows your border widths and your padding widths to not add to the size of anything in the box model. We'll look at, we may take a look at, we will take a look at using multiple columns, a style setting called column count, and then of course media queries. And all of the goal of all of these things combined is to make sure that when you view a page on a mobile device or a smaller screen, it still looks good and that it hasn't destroyed the layout of the page. All right, so I'm going to start, oh, not with that one. I'm going to start with a, if I can find it, that's not it. Apologize. I had it here moments ago. All right, here we go. I'm going to start with a page that we've actually used in class before. Perhaps not your section of the class, but somebody's section of the class. And so this was a page that was used to show internal styles. And so if we take a quick look at the code, we've got an internal style sheet. Here's a color palette that's been commented out. Here's the style sheet. And if you look at the HTML, it's pretty straightforward. There's a wrapper, which is setting the structure of the page, this outside border. And then there is a nav section, a header section, a nav section, the main section, and then within the main section there's a section and an article section. And so if you look at this page, basically this entire white space is the main section, but then the section covers this first article and image, and the article section includes the second article, including the image, right? And then of course we have a footer. All right, so that's how this page is structured. Now, with responsive design, there is a methodology known as mobile first, which is basically the concept that you should start by styling your page so that it looks good on a mobile device, and then use media queries to upscale it to other devices. And so I want to try to honor that idea, and it's going to be painful. Ready? So what we're going to do is we're going to take the HTML for this page, and we're going to kill the styles. So here I am opening it in Notepad++, and I'm going to take this entire existing style sheet, except for the color palette, and I'm going to destroy it. Just altogether delete it. Right? And so now if we refresh this page, bang, no styles at all. Okay, that was painful. Now what we're going to attempt to do is we're going to create styles for a window size that would be likely for a mobile device. And that's going to be our ground floor. And then we'll build style sheets up from there for a desktop. Okay, so our screen width we're going to pretend is something like this. And we're going to redesign this page, the CSS for this page, to fit that window. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to, for the body section, I guess I ought to indent here, right? So for the body section, we're going to create a background color of white. And then we'll go ahead and set our fonts as well. By setting the font family in the body section, everything else will inherit it. Okay, so as we take a look at our HTML down here, it starts with a wrapper, but at phone sizes, we don't want a wrapper. we don't want a container. We want to let it go fill the whole width of the screen. So I'm just going to ignore wrapper. Without a class or an ID defined for wrapper, this div won't do anything. So I'm just flat going to ignore it to begin with, right? Okay, so the next thing we're going to do then is we're going to create a header section. And in the header section, what we actually want to do is use a background image. And so let's go ahead and bring in the background image. And to do that, you use URL, and then in parentheses, you tell it what the URL is. And so my file name is Portrait. You know what? Just to be as lazy as possible, let's go up here and find this image. I'm going to copy it, copy the file name out of it, and then paste it in here. Okay, and then I believe that I need to set a height to this because the image is not, the background image won't show unless the header section has an established height. Okay, and then while I'm in here, I know that that's going to crop really tight into the image, and so I want to set the position of the background image just so. Sorry, background position. Okay, so left and right, I want it to start at 0 pixels, which is the normal place it would start. But then what I want to do is I want to scroll the image down towards the vertical middle of the image. And through some previous experimentation, I landed at -27 pixels. Basically, that means within the header, the image is going to kind of crop down 27 pixels. All right, so let's take a look at what that looks like. Okay, and so you can see there's my image, and it's showing more or less the way I want it to show. I don't want this margin to show, and I believe that's coming from the body section. And then, of course, I need to style the text. Okay, so in the body section, we'll do margin 0 pixels. Okay, and that ought to get the image to go all the way to the sides and top. Yep, which is good. All right, and now let's take care of this text. So within the header, there's H1. Okay, so we'll do header H1, and I think I want to change out the font. And I not only want to change it out, change out the H1 here. I want to change it out everywhere. So I'm actually going to preempt that and create another style, H1 and H3. And I'm going to specify a font family. Now my favorite font family for headers is called Arial Black, but I'm aware that not every system has Arial Black, and so I'm going to default to Arial if they don't have Arial Black. But then I know like phones sometimes aren't even going to have Arial, so then I'll go to sans serif, which just means that it'll use any available sans serif font to show that particular font. Okay, and then within H1, I want to set some things like the color. We're going to set that to white, and we're going to set the padding. So what I want to do is I want to bring this. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to bring this down and in a little bit. So for my padding, from the top, we'll bring this down maybe 30 pixels, and then from the left, only about 10 pixels. Okay, and all is well, except that that white is a little bit too stark. So I actually want to put a black shadow on it, and so I'll do a text shadow, and this text shadow is going to be 0 pixels. So it's going to be it's going to hardly have any size at all. It's going to have no offset at all, but it's going to be 3 pixels spread. And what that's going to do is it's just going to give a background or an outline to the text. But then I'm also going to do one with some spread, 4 pixels, 4 pixels, 5 pixels, and then black. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so now I've got the positioning and the shadow that I'd like to have on that text. I think it'll look just fine on a mobile device. And so now if I look at my HTML, the next piece is the navigation. All right, so the way this navigation is set up, it's simply an unordered list and a series of list items. Okay, so on a mobile phone, there's not much that I have to do. Sorry, I'm all over the place here. My nav right here is already going to be, should already be a block element, so it's going to go all the way to the edges. And there's nothing more that I need to do to set my nav. So then I can go down to my nav UL and then my nav LI. All right, so for the nav UL, I want to get rid of the bullets from the list. So I'm going to do list style type none. And then I also want to get rid of any margin or padding on my list. On my list items. I'm sorry, on my list itself. All right, and now I can focus in on my list items. All right, and what I want to do here is I want these list items as nav buttons basically to go all the way across the width of the page, and so I'm going to say display block. That's going to go all the way across the width of the page, and then I want them to separate one from another. So I'm going to give them a border, a bottom border, just a little 1 pixel solid black border, which I don't even have to say black, it's the default. And then let's give it a background color. And this background color will be, I've got my color palette up here, so I'm going to use this khaki color. And that's going to be my background color. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Okay, so there's my my nav buttons. So now I need to edit the actual text of this list, the style of this text of this list, to make it look a little bit nicer. So to do that, I'm going to be on my nav UL LI A for anchor. And so the text for those anchors, first of all, I want to center the text. Okay, and then I want to give it some padding because it was real squished. So we're going to give it some padding. And the way we could do this is with a shorthand. So if I say 15 pixels, that's going to mean 15 pixels top and bottom, and then 0 pixels is going to mean 0 pixels left and right. So if I've done that correctly, it should give me some vertical space in between these things. Okay, and then what I want to do is specify my font family again. You know what? I'm just going to steal the same one from earlier. This one that we used on this H1 and H3. You know what? I could get real clever and flip this. There we go. So I don't even have to put it in here. And then, oh, you know what? It's not the same font family. I was too clever for my own good. Okay. It's similar. Look what I've done here. It's similar, so I'm going to copy this, except that I don't want to use Arial Black. That's too bold for this, so I'm just going to say Arial and sans serif. Okay. I do want to do font weight bold. So if I do Arial and bold, that's still much lighter than Arial Black. Okay. All right, and then I want the color of that text to be white instead of the default blue or purple that links usually are. Oh, I can get it. Wake up, wake up, wake up. All right, color white. And then I don't want the underline on the links. So I say text decoration none. And then once again, I want a little bit of shadow to get it to pop off of the background. So text shadow. And this time I'm doing 0 pixels, 0 pixels. So basically the shadow has no particular size, but then it's got a 1 pixel spread. And so without it being offset from the text, but just a little bit of spread should provide a little bit of an outline. All right, let's see how we did here. Okay, some good, some bad. Seeing the text the way I expected it to be, but I'm not seeing the alignment. And I'm just looking at this thinking that a lot of these things that I've given it here would not necessarily work on a standard list. Let's see if we give it a block background. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. All right, so by telling it display block, I was basically telling that each one of these links to fill its space, basically. And so now a lot of these other things finally worked where they weren't working on LI without a block element. All right, so that all looks good. This is pretty much the way I wanted the nav to be, so that's great. The one issue is that I want the rollover, right? I want the rollover. So now I just need to take this style and I just need to give it a hover effect and a visited effect. We start with visited because I want the hover to work even after it's been visited. And I'm just going to go with color white. So basically the visited style is going to look the same as the regular style, but I do have to specify it, otherwise it's going to go to the default, and the default is purple. I'm not looking for purple. Okay, and then for hover, I'm going to use that same color from my oh, I'm sorry. No. I got lost there a little bit. Instead of the background, instead of the color changing, I want the background color to change while it's being hovered over. And for my style palette, I'm going to go with like this rust color. It's kind of a red. Oh, don't forget the pound symbol, the hexadecimal indicator. All right, so I think this is what I'm looking for. And let's take a look. Okay, so visited or not, they'll look like this. And then when I hover over them, the background will change up. And that's just what I want. Okay, so the styling for my nav is done. And now if I continue down this list, the next thing on the list, we're in the main section. And within the main section, we're inside the section, which is the first of the two stories. And then the first thing we encounter here is an H1. Okay, so the H1 is a headline size 1, and I already set the font family for headline size 1. And when I look at that headline, I'm just fine with it. The only thing I'm not fine with about that is that it's right up against the edge. So what I'm going to do is create a main style. Let me see if this is appropriate. I believe it is. Padding 10 pixels. All right. So for the mobile device, I should be able to put in this 10 pixels of padding for the main section, which should affect everything from this point down until we get to the footer. Okay. All right. So the next thing then would be to deal with it would be this image. Okay, there's my image. And so I want this image, I want it to be able to shrink and enlarge. So I'm going to set the width to 100%. And because it's a percentage, it'll fill its container. Yep, it'll fill its container. And so as we raise and shrink this, we should be in good shape. Now if I go too big, it's kind of ridiculously large, but I don't need to worry about that, because if I go too big, I'm eventually going to have a media query that's going to break me into a different style sheet. Right? So I think I'm in good shape here. I just want to add a couple things to this. Let's give it a border, 1 pixel solid. And I think I'm going to go with rounded corners. So border radius, maybe 15 pixels. All right, so it just makes it stand out a little bit more against the white background. Okay, and then this body text is looking all right. Basically what's going on there is that I set my font family for the entire body section to Calibri or some other sans serif font, and so it's looking pretty good. These bold items are actually coming from the HTML. I cheated at one point and used the B tags instead of setting a style, so forgive me, but that made life a whole lot easier. The image tag affected this image as well, so it's set to that size and it will scale. And then this headline is a little smaller than this one, so I believe that that's the H3, and we set the H3 along with the H1 earlier when we set the font family, so that's looking just fine as well. And then eventually we get down here and we've got this text, and if we scroll down and take a peek at my HTML, this is actually the footer section. Okay, so we're going to take care of the footer section next. So let's see. In the footer section, oops, not capitals. In the footer section, what I want to do with this is give it a background color. And that background color is going to be from my color palette. Let's see. I think I want to go with a kind of this light gray color right here. So I'm going to copy this, pop it in there. And then for the text color, is the text color any different? No, the text color is still black. Okay, and then since this footer is a box model, let's give it some padding. so the text doesn't sit right on the edge. And then the text in this box is just meant to be like a disclaimer. And I just think it'll look nice if it is centered. I don't actually expect people to put in a lot of effort to read it, but I need it on the page as a disclaimer. So we'll center it so it looks nice, even though that makes it less readable. And I do want it to be smaller text, so we're going to set the font size to small. Okay, and I believe that's pretty much everything that I want to do to this. Okay, and I'm going to say save to that, and then a tricky thing here. That's not tricky yet. I'm going to refresh this, and then you can see what the footer looks like. So it anchors the page pretty well. Now, the one thing that I don't like about this footer is that for some reason, it won't collapse fully on this, this URL. This is a URL, but it's not a link. You can't click it and go to that destination. You can make it a link, but I don't really want to. I just want it on the page as a disclaimer. But when I shrink the page in, I can't get any farther than this as far as this text wrap goes. Right? Everything else seems to behave pretty reasonably, but not so much this one. Okay, so what I'm going to do about that is I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to go down into the HTML code, and because I don't really want these links to be links, I'm just going to get a little bit tricky in here, and I'm going to put a space in between some of these directories. And yes, this would kill a link, but the truth is I don't want this to be a link. It's just meant to be kind of a disclaimer. And so if somebody actually wanted to use this link, what they would have to do is copy and paste this and then take all of these spaces out. And that's not a very polite thing for me to do. But once again, I don't intend for it to actually be a link. It's just a disclaimer. And so now you can see it all fits nicely in the space. Right. Okay, and it should still be variable, right? So it'll widen out as the page widens out. Okay, I think this is the gist of what I want this to look like. I'm going to try to splice in a little bit of video from a mobile device to show you what this looks like on an actual mobile device. But that's what I want this to look like for a phone. Okay, so great. I'm going to pause the video at this point, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you an app media query to make this look good on a tablet. All right.